That was wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. All right, so we are steady in our talk about oneness, a day at a time. We are steady in our talk about dissolving our sense of separation. And so today, as always, before we get into the message, I'd just like to drop a few spiritual principles in our lap to help get us further anchored into the Word. You can find these spiritual principles if you download the QR code or go to our website, so you'll have the same spiritual principles that I'm reading from. Originally, this is Ernest Holmes' What We Believe. So this morning we are starting with spiritual principle number 1, and it states, we believe in God, the living Spirit, Almighty One, indestructible, absolute, and self-existent cause. We believe this one manifests itself in and through all creation, but it is not absorbed by its creation. Spiritual principle number 2, we believe in the individualization of the Spirit in us, and that all people are individualizations of the one Spirit. Spiritual principle number 4, we believe that heaven is within us, and that we experience it to the degree that we become conscious of it. Number 5, we do believe that the ultimate goal of life to be a complete freedom from all discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be attained by all. Now, in this teaching, we spout a lot about changing your thinking, but what follows changing your thinking is change your mind. And you can't change your mind if you don't have an open mind. You can't change your mind if you don't have an open mind. It is the great Reg E. Walker, the husband of Jerry Walker, who says that a closed mind is a death trap. So, our ticket to freedom then must be an open mind. An open mind. And so, in this teaching, we have different tools: meditation, contemplation, and our greatest tool is a form of prayer that we call spiritual mind treatment, otherwise known as treatment. Now, there's some differences between spiritual mind treatment and prayer. Before I go too much into it, let me just say this is my shout out. You really should get into a class, because I can't stand here and tell you everything about spiritual mind treatment, but it's worth it. It's our tool, our number 1 tool to open our minds. So, as I said, there are some differences between what you might commonly know prayer to be versus what we consider our form of prayer, spiritual mind treatment, to be. So maybe your experience with prayer is that you understand that it is communion and petition. For us, spiritual mind treatment is something different. It is recognition and acceptance. We are recognizing the divine power and presence at the center of our being, and we are accepting this goodness that is available to all. 2 different stands, 2 different lanes, but for us, it's spiritual mind treatment. So, in spiritual mind treatment, we are formulating thoughts and ideas that lead us to a desired experience in our life. When we are doing spiritual mind treatment, when we are treating, it's not that we are holding thoughts in our mind as such. What we are doing is we are opening up for the thoughts that is within us to flow out. We are opening ourselves up for new thoughts to because all the thoughts are already in us, but for the thoughts to flow out, that it might become a possibility in your life. Now you can see it as a possibility. So that's what's happening in spiritual mind treatment. And the one who is doing the spiritual mind treatment, we always say that we are treating our own consciousness. So if you come to me and you're wanting prayer, I'm not treating your consciousness. I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm not trying to open your mind. I'm remembering to open my own mind, because there's only one mind. All right, the rest you're going to have to get in class to get. But, all right, so when I first heard the word treatment, it was foreign to me. I didn't know what it meant. My mind could not make the connection as to why they would call prayer spiritual mind treatment. So, because my experience with prayer, it didn't lead me to my mind. It led me to thinking that I could somehow persuade God's mind. But in spiritual mind treatment, it's about my mind. In fact, we say that God is within. So still, it's our own mind that we are opening up and being present to. So I thought that I could persuade God's mind by knowing right from wrong and doing right from wrong, acting accordingly. And in my own experience, I saw people pray, but never with a real sense of expectancy. Never with a real sense of acceptance. You know, it was like they was praying and then they might immediately go to, well, it might happen. I don't know. You know, we hope so. Something like that, right? But for us in spiritual mind treatment, we move into a stance of acceptance, knowing it to be so. That's why we always say, and so it is. So, when it comes to treatment, spiritual mind treatment, you want to think of it like as if you went to the doctor and the doctor prescribed you a treatment plan, right? The doctor would say, do this, do that, feel better, right? Get some rest, eat right, drink some water, you know, whatever. Feel better. Same thing with spiritual mind treatment. When we engage in spiritual mind treatments, there is a great deal of a sense of expectancy that the conditions in our lives can change and they will change. Okay, so in the treatment then, we are focused on our mind, on our own mind, our own thoughts, our own feelings. We are focused on the supremacy of good in our lives. We're becoming open and available to all that has been given us. This is living a conscious and intentional life. We are focused on the good and the supremacy of good constantly and consciously. We're not doing this unconsciously, and we don't do it sometime. We do it all the time. So, again, like Brother Reg E. Walker and his book, Life is Funny, but It Ain't No Joke, you should pick the book up. Trust me, it's a real gem. In his book of Proverbs and his wisdom sayings, he says, I must take responsibility for the actions of my mind. I am not my mind, but its master. I am responsible for it, not it for me. In his book on page 18, as he is sharing with us what he calls the droning and unbearable machine, his mind, he says, he's talking about his encounter with his mind. My encounter with it forced me to realize that the mind is a machine, but a machine without an operator. It is a builder, but a builder without a plan. Impersonal and amoral by its very nature, it is incapable of judging the worth of materials. It is my responsibility as the architect of my life to provide my mind with a blueprint, as it will build with any thought, belief, feeling, or experience, be it self-liberating or self-sabotaging. I also began to imagine the mind as a kind of personal computer and realized that if I, the owner-operator, am not programming it, the rest of the world is. Right? A whole lot of faith, our theme for the month. A whole lot of faith is the requirement as we continue to dissolve our sense of separation and own our oneness with all of life. A whole lot of faith is what is required as we start to move into, live into this good and the supremacy of good in our lives. A whole lot of faith is what is required as we remove the veils and take responsibility for our unconditioned mind. A whole lot of faith is required as we take stock in the invisible and begin to rely upon the invisible more than we rely upon the visible. A whole lot of faith. And when I think about a whole lot of faith, I think about growing up as a little girl in Smyrna, Tennessee. I know you never heard of it, at my grandparents' house. When you looked out the kitchen window, you could see a big piece of land, and they called it a lot. It's so much land that it's plotted. It's on a piece of paper, right? It's that much land. And so when I think about a whole lot of faith, I think about a whole lot of faith. In fact, my grandmother would say, when I say, "Where's your husband?" She would say, "Oh, he done went down there through that lot and he at that church." So a whole lot of faith is what I'm talking about. Not a little bit of faith, but a whole lot of faith. We are to have a whole lot of faith in ourselves, that we can turn our thinking around, that we can have an open mind. We are to have a whole lot of faith in ourselves to stay open and available long enough for new insight and new revelation, for high and holy ideas to begin to flow through us and take flight. It takes a whole lot of faith. In Ernest Holmes' book, Thought Are Things, in a reading titled Modern Slavery, he says this. He says, we can discover a way to grow up so that we are once more masters of our lives and do not just exist as automations and slaves in a system from which we try to escape by retreating from life. He says, individually, we alone are responsible for how well we can grow mentally to cope with the pressures of daily living. This no one else can do for us. A fundamental starting point is a definite program for developing greater mental and emotional maturity. However, it must be realized that any maturity we may desire to attain can only be achieved by first seeking to grow up spiritually. This may not be an easy thing to do, but on it rests our chance of regaining our lost freedom. I was thinking, our theme for the month, a whole lot of faith, it should have just been grow up. He warns us that growing up, it might not be easy. He said a definite program That means oneness, a day at a time. The practice is daily. Definite means daily. Did you pray? Definitely. Did you meditate? Yes, definitely. Daily, daily, daily oneness. So, I'm not going to tell you to tell your neighbor to grow up, but you tell yourself, grow up. And tell yourself one more time, grow up. I'm responsible for my own mind, Reggie Walker told us, and not it for me. Grow up. When I am its master, when we are the masters of our mind, we have every right to expect the conditions in our lives to change. Every right to expect the conditions in our lives to change. In the Science of Mind 365 on page 87, Ernest Holmes, in his writing titled Divine Guidance, he says this about the mind. We believe that the mind of God governs all things. We believe that God's intelligence in the midst of us is governing and guiding, counseling and advising, causing us to know what to do under every circumstance and at all times, if we will but trust it. Therefore, every seeming problem has a right solution, and we may turn to the infinite knower for the answer. In our human ignorance, we often make unwise decisions, but there is nothing that God cannot set right, if we would permit it to do so. Or there's nothing that life cannot set right, if we would permit it to do so. If we will but take our personal problem to a high place in our consciousness, it will disappear as the answer to it takes its place. This is the way a problem is solved. We should know that there is nothing in us that can keep this from happening. There is no thought of doubt or limitation. We should feel that the answer is established in our consciousness and will make itself known to our mind right now in our present experience. This can be done only as we let go of the problem as a problem and definitely expect and accept its answer. Finally, he says, always there is an inner, quiet, persistent confidence, a non-resistant but complete acceptance, an inward flowing with the stream of life, knowing that it carries me safely and surely to my destination and to the accomplishment of every good purpose. This is divine guidance, and I surrender to it. If I was a rapper, I'd probably say, I ain't got no problems. I ain't got no problems. He says that we should take our problems to a higher place in consciousness. We should take our problems to a higher place in our mind. We should take our problems to a higher place where we open our minds. Let me just say this. I know you might be thinking you don't have a closed mind, but, you know, decades after decades and centuries after centuries and years after years, people have been telling us, open your mind. Pay attention to your thinking. You might think you don't have a closed mind, but let me tell you, in my 25 years or so of being in this teaching, I can say I've never, ever met one person, not a one, nobody, who could say they always had an open mind. Nobody, not outside these walls, not a one, Not one single person who can make that declaration. My mind is always open. So, take our problems to a high place in consciousness where it will disappear. And in its place, we have the right to expect revelation after revelation, insight, holy ideas, high ideas that'll lead us into another place and into another space, causing us to have another experience. We are to expect the divine guidance that once we surrender to it, sets in, and we can affirm and know that it knows, perhaps what my human mind does not know. But it's going to take a whole lot of faith to open up to it, to open your mind to it. You know, the thing is life is always giving us opportunities to grow up. Life is always giving us opportunities to reevaluate what we thought we knew. Life is always giving us opportunities to grow up. Life is always giving us opportunities to stop whining. Life is always giving us opportunities to stop whining. Listen, if you're going to be mad, but stop whining. If you're going to be sad, but stop whining. Always giving us opportunities to stop whining. Listen, if you could see me a couple days ago, boy, oh boy, you'd be surprised by old Rev T. I was whining and whining and whining. Reverend T? My mind was closed, y'all. It wasn't open. But life is always giving us opportunities to become the masters of our mind. Let me see if I can bring forth a little bit more into the message that I'm talking about. See, we really ought to be mindful about greed and selfishness. Why was I whining? Selfish reasons. See, in the Bible, in the book of Proverbs, Proverbs 15:27, it says, whoever is greedy for unjust gain troubles his own household. And in Proverbs 28:25, it says, a greedy man or a greedy woman stirs up strife. Why was I whining? Strife. In my own mind. But I'm the master of it. It, not of me. The greed and the selfishness that I'm talking about is not the obvious greed and selfishness. Go deeper. The subtle ways that greed and selfishness shows up in our lives is the invitation that I'm extending to you as I'm extended to myself, to be aware when we have moved into greed and we've moved into selfishness. It's important. It's so important. You find it in the teachings of, in the writings of Ptah Hotep. This is the oldest, one of the oldest books in the world, from Kemet. Thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. They said, if you want to have perfect conduct, to be free from every evil, then above all, guard against the vice of greed. Greed is a grievous sickness that has no cure. There's no treatment for it. Greed is a compound of all the evils. It is a bundle of hateful things. I got to give it to you again. If you want to have perfect conduct to be free from every evil, then above all, guard against the vice of greed. Greed is a grievous sickness that has no cure. There's no treatment for it. Greed is a compound of all the evils. It is a bundle of all hateful things. Listen, as I said, I'm not talking about greed and selfishness that people can readily see. I'm talking about the things that are not easily seen. I'm talking about the thoughts that we harbor and fester that people don't know about. Greed, selfishness. I'm talking about the thoughts that perhaps we have unconsciously left God out of, when we've gone unconscious. And all we can think about is me, 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 and my. Selfishness, greed. It's going to take a whole lot of faith to turn our thinking around. He said there's no treatment for it, but we can guard against it. In other words, at any time, any one of us can move into selfishness. At any time, any one of us can move into greed. Me, and my. We should guard against it. Anytime we have closed our minds, listen, we got problems. Anytime you're not open to a new idea, anytime you're not open to the highest and the holiest and the best for all, greed and selfishness, closed mind, changing our thinking, changing our thoughts. We need an open mind to change our thoughts. To this greed, there is no treatment. So we must guard against it. Grow up. Stop whining. Grow up. Spiritually, stop whining. Open your mind. Open your mind. Practitioners? Join me in turning inward in this moment for some spiritual mind treatment, where we know that the words that flow through are from on high, that every word that proceedeth out of the mouth, that it is filled by love and fulfilled in our world. So, let us just know right here and right now that there is only one life. There is only one mind. And that mind is always open, forever spiraling upward. Always open and available to becoming more and never the less. I am speaking of your mind and my mind now. Just in case we didn't know it, now we know. We are the masters of it, and it not of us. I declare and decree for you, as I do for myself, that my mind is open to insight and revelation, new perspectives. My mind is open to things I hadn't seen and things I hadn't heard. My mind is open to what I didn't know. My mind is open to coming to know something more about what I thought I knew. I affirm for you, as I affirm for myself, that my mind now, I am the architect, and you are the architect causing it to deliver precisely, constantly, the things that we hold in it. So I know for you, as I know for myself, that the only ideas that we are holding and creating and building and engaged in is the supremacy of good in our lives. Let us know that whatever the condition is, that good is on scene, that God is very present, that divine guidance is guiding us consciously and constantly to see and to know and to affirm goodness. So I just affirm and I know that nothing can get in our way, not even our own ego, not even greed, not even selfishness. I declare for you, as I declare for myself, my creed to greed. Go. It ain't worth it. Go. It ain't worth it. Be mad if you're going to be mad, but don't whine. Make the declaration that God is and I am. I'm open to insight and revelation, so that I may move forward in a way that I'm creating more good in my life. I do give thanks this day to be able to speak these words and to know them to be made whole in my life and in your life. I am expecting, and we should expect, goodness. I am expecting to see goodness, and I'm accepting it in my life as I'm accepting it in your life. It is done as it is a divine idea in the mind of God. Whatever might be ailing you, whatever might be bothering you, whatever might be making you mad, whatever might be making you sad, I affirm and know that we are growing up spiritually. And whatever you're mad about, it don't last. It can't last in the supremacy of good. So I'm just moved in this moment to simply gather in the words that have been spoken, the songs that have been sang, the love that has been shared, the inspiration and the motivation that we offer to each other. As we take it all in, I already know that the word becomes made flesh. It's true. It does. And so we rejoice in it, we give thanks for it, we accept it, and we let it be. And we do so by saying, and so it is. And so as we journey on throughout our week, let me remind you, grow up, stop whining, open your mind, and so it is.